that's the blessing and curse of social media, right? Unfortunately, we want to showcase the best parts of us because ultimately that's what people want to see, and they don't want to see the journey. And I always have to remind people that it didn't happen with a snap of the fingers. I tell people I got lucky, but I also tell them that I got lucky because I built my own luck, right? I put myself in a position to be lucky.
Hey everyone, we're back at you with another episode of the Hero's Journey podcast. I appreciate you all showing up. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss a single episode. If you enjoy listening to the podcast, I'd love it if you could rate and review it. It helps more people find the podcast and helps us spread the word on sharing our journeys with each other. We got another kick-ass guest today. I'm so thrilled to have the opportunity to share his journey with you all. If you're into sports, pop culture, you're absolutely going to love this talk. Today's guest is Dhanung Bulsara, or commonly known as D, and he's built himself into somewhat of a Swiss Army knife. From being a radio host, videographer, MC, podcaster, digital host, in-game host, and sideline reporter, Dhanung has been breaking ground wherever he goes. D helped establish What's Up Media, a digital media company, as a creative director and videographer. He's also worked with some established brands such as FIBA, Basketball Canada, Golf Canada, Shoeless Joe's, and Public Health, just to name a few. BlogTO opened up new opportunities for D, being a brand ambassador and host of CAA's 115th anniversary campaign. He's also launched his own sports and pop culture podcast called The Details Podcast, and has conducted interviews with some reputable names such as Simu Liu, Russel Peters, Paul Jones, and even appearing on the 2021 Grammys pre-show on City TV. D recently started new roles as an in-game host for the Raptors 905 and as a sideline reporter for the Canadian Elite Basketball League. D, this is so great to have you on, man. I appreciate you taking the time to be on today.
I'm exhausted because I never thought about my resume and everything I've done in that context. And you just listing out that like that, I was like, oh wow, I've done a lot more than I thought I did. But yeah, no, thanks for having me, man. Obviously got a great deal of respect for you. And when you asked me to do this, I didn't think twice. So pleasure to be on here.
I love, man. Thank you so much. So I want to jump right into things. And when I was putting my questions together, I was just trying to think of like what's a good logical kind of flow. And then I actually saw, because I added you on LinkedIn, and I saw you had made this post there. I kind of wanted to start with that. And in that post, you kind of talked about continuing to break through the glass ceiling. Can you just tell me a little bit about what exactly you meant by that?
Yeah, well, for that specific post, I think that, this league, so it was pertaining to the CBL. It was, Drake was showing up to games. We had J. Cole announced that he would be participating in the league. And, it's just like every time I think that the league set a standard or, some sort of goal, it continues to just go through that. And I like the term glass ceiling because I relate to that as well. Like every time I think I've achieved, peak, whatever it is I wanted to do or attain or a goal in my life, I continue to surprise myself with what I'm able to do. So that's what I mean, specifically to that post, it was talking about the league and, how groundbreaking it is and how it's been able to get a lot of eyeballs on it. So, it's continuing to break the glass ceiling in that sense. But, I've also been able to apply that to my life as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of what I was thinking about. I thought maybe that's what you were kind of talking about, like talking about yourself kind of breaking through, whether it's barriers or like doing new things. And that's what I was so kind of keen to kind of hear more about. And And just kind of following up on that, like looking back now, like when did you know that you wanted to get into the world of media, broadcasting journalism?
I will try to give you a short answer for this because there's always there's always an origin story with this sort of stuff, and especially being a South Asian as well,
Mm-hmm.
it never comes easy. But for me, it started really young. I'm going to give you the most stereotypical answer, but I grew up in a house with Bollywood movies and music, and I'm sure you can relate to that. And so the idea of entertaining, music, dancing, all that stuff really appealed to me at a young age. And so I grew up, participating so I went to third language school, which is, my mother tongue, Gujarati. And so I went to Gujarati school on Saturdays, and, there'd always be functions and end of the year programs. And I always jumped on any opportunity to participate in dance and be a part of a performance, but I also, like, nobody ever wanted to be an MC, and so I got a real early taste at that, and I loved that. I love the idea of entertaining people. I love the idea of hosting people. I loved navigating people through a show. If I had to kill time, that's something that I really thrived on. And I don't know, it's just that bouncing back and forth between energy that I really, really got enamored with. And then over time, as I got older, as any stereotypical East Indian father would say, my dad wanted me to be a pharmacist. And, there's a lot of Gujarati pharmacists out there. So, he saw the blueprint, he talked to a lot of people, he saw the path for me. And, I struggled in high school with the chemistries and bios and physics of the world, and calculus, especially, man, I'm so bad at numbers. It's so ironic. And so, I struggled through all that because I think ultimately I knew what I really wanted to do. Right. And anytime there was opportunities for me to do the things that I was passionate about, that's where I put all my energy into. And so, to answer your story, your question there, like it started at a very young age. And I said the word ironically, but it's kind of my parents' fault that I fell into what I did. And I'm sure, you would tell them that now, and they're like, damn it, like we should never showed you a Bollywood movie if we really wanted you to be a pharmacist. But that's not to say that my parents are obviously super proud of me now and have been really supportive since.
That's amazing. And you know what? I'm gonna touch on the family aspect of that. Just knowing what it's like growing up in a South Asian home. So I guess it's fair to say that you were pretty comfortable, being around people, or like, you were extroverted pretty much from a young age. Like you weren't that shy, quiet kid. You were always kind of like, had that energy. You were like right in the center, kind of, you want to be that kind of center of where people are.
Yeah, and my parents will tell you that right away, right? I didn't sit down. I couldn't sit down. And I hate to say it now because it sounds so arrogant, but I really did like being the center of attention in most cases. And I liked being really loud. And I think that also comes with a culture, right? We have a culture that's so vibrant, so
Mm-hmm.
loud, very proud. And so I never felt shy about any of that sort of stuff. The irony is my brother's super introverted and he's kind of shy. So I don't know who I have to thank in my bloodline for getting that gene, but it did come at a very young age.
Yeah, and so I mean, even though like you and I would be as children, I'd be very similar to your brother. I was always the shy, quiet kid growing
Mm.
up. Didn't really, I was probably told by relatives that he's very quiet, he's not very friendly, right? Always kind of quiet, more to myself. I had my group of friends, but definitely if someone said, "Hey, do you want to do this little talk or speech?" I'd be terrified. I'd be like, "No, you
Yeah,
got the wrong
yeah,
person." That's not me at all. So it's even for me, it's a complete surprise to people when they think, "Oh, like you teach now as a professor," like that could have never
yeah.
guessed
And you
that.
got a podcast. Look at you.
Yeah, so it's completely different. I've always kind of wanted to do stuff like this, but like it's when I look at your and mine, I'm like, yeah, completely opposite. I was on the complete other end of the spectrum, so I'm sometimes surprised that I'm like, oh, okay, like I'm still surprised I'm doing this, but I definitely not a natural, the kind of the way you are. So
Yeah, well, I mean, I would never guess that the way you've handled this podcast and the way you're conversing with me now. So you
I
come a long
appreciate
way.
it. I appreciate it. And so you hit on one of the questions I was going to ask you, and being from a South Asian background, and I know from experience that sometimes doing things that are outside the boundary of what's considered safe or expected can be a little bit difficult. You kind of alluded to, especially with family, expectations, things like that. When you told your family that you wanted to go pursue this path of media journalism, broadcasting, what was that initial kind of reaction like?
Yeah, so it's funny because they encouraged it, and I think they loved seeing sort of the fruit of my work. When we went to these functions and they saw that I was able to excel in public speaking and performing and all that sort of stuff. But it came a time I lied to my parents. I did a victory lap. I did a fifth year of high school, and I said partly because I wanted to improve my grades, get more courses and credits, but a lot of it was I wanted to go back and play more basketball because I did play high school basketball and then also participate in all the other stuff. So it really was a victory lap because I had a lot of fun in my fifth year. And then I finally came to a point where I told my dad, like, listen, I'm not going to get into the schools you want me to get into for, pharmaceuticals and whatever path that may be. But also I told him, I really love film. I really love television. I love, pop culture, not so much sports. Cause for me, it was initially, cinema that I was achieving to get to. I'm a massive cinephile. I love film, as we, talked about before you hit the record button here. And so that was the path that I was trying to pay for myself. And so we sat down, we talked, and it was a difficult conversation to say the least. I'm not going to say that my dad was, throwing flowers at me and saying, go and pursue your dreams. But he said, you can go give it the go college try, go and do what you can. But if you don't succeed in your pursuit of this after school, right? If you're, because our parents unfortunately think that you get a job right out of school. Once you go to school, and that's not the case anymore. You'll have to go back to the drawing board. And I will highly encourage you to go back to the dream that I have for you. And so, I want to, and again, I say this and I hope people aren't thinking like my dad's a dick. He's not at all, but my dad obviously has the best in my interest as well. Right. So I went to Sheridan for film studies. And I did a couple of years there, and I realized it wasn't the program for me. And I also realized that I really wanted to get back in front of a camera because that's where my strong suit was and what I was really ultimately passionate about. And so I went to Conestoga for broadcast journalism, and that was great. It was a great experience. And then right out of school, I was, one of those lucky people that got a radio job right out of school. And that lasted for a year, and it was only temporary. So I did it based on a recommendation from my professor. And it was like, I learned very early how difficult it can be in what you're pursuing if you're not passionate about specific things. And what I mean by that is I love the radio aspect of it, but I was like on an 80s or a 70s, 80s station. So a lot of older music, which I admire, but I was talking about things I didn't really care about, right? Like Home Depot sales or, the farmer's market in Kitchener. And like, it was just wasn't, and I learned really quickly, like, I really need to get into a space that I feel comfortable in and it's something that I really love. And so, and sorry, I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but it wasn't easy because, right after that radio job, I bartended for 4 years. And the irony with that is I don't drink at all. And so it was really weird for my parents to see me do that. Obviously in that in that amount of time I was able to make a lot of money. And I was also able to network, which led me to my next opportunities after that. But it wasn't easy. And I'm sure any South Asian kid listening to this can relate to it, because it's like, you don't want to disappoint your parents and you want to, follow their guidance. But sometimes you have to have those difficult conversations, and ultimately your parents love you and will support you whatever you want to do.
No, I love that. And honestly, I think and that's part of why I loved wanting to do talks like this, because I think people will, if they'll look at you, they're going to see, oh, he's, we'll talk about later, blog TO, now he's with the Raptors 905, but they don't see what it took you to kind of get there.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't just go from finishing school and people were, falling on their knees in front of you and saying, please be our in-game host, or please do this, right? You have to kind of go through that struggle and grind, and people miss that part.
And I tell people all the time, right? My pages are glorified to show all the best parts of what I do and what I've been able to do, but they haven't seen like the 9 times I've fallen. And I tell people, I fall 9 times, but I make sure I get up 10 times. And ultimately that's why I'm in the position that I am now, doing what I love.
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? And I love that part. And I was going to talk about this one. Was the role you were talking about, was that in Waterloo? Like was it like Radio 99.5 K Fun? That was the one?
That is correct. Yeah, that was my first job out of school.
Yeah, I remember reading about that one. And so from there, and then you did the bartending for a couple of years. And correct me if I'm wrong, is it fair to say like Blog TO kind of really opened up a lot of doors for you from that starting point?
Yeah, so in between that, so after I worked, so it was a Buffalo Wild Wings in Guelph, and it's on the corner of Harvard and I can't remember. I think it's Gordon, but it's like right across the university, right?
Yeah.
So I always had people from the university coming in, not just students but employees as well, and a lot of people from the athletic department. And so, I always had these conversations about sports naturally because it was a sports bar, and then I'd always plug in the fact that I went to school of broadcast journalism. And then eventually word got around that there's this guy at Buffalo Wild Wings that knows sports, and he also has the background in broadcast journalism. And so the athletic department reached out to me and said, hey, we'd like to present you an opportunity to run and produce and direct our live streams for our four major sports, which is volleyball, basketball, hockey, and football. And I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. Like, you're telling me I get to run a sports program basically for all these collegiate sports in my hometown. Why wouldn't I take that? And so it started as part-time, and this is the grind part of the story, right? Like I'm going to the university during the day, and then I'm working at the bar at night, and that was the cycle for me. And that's where I did a lot of my grunt work and laying the foundation of what I am and what it is I like to do. And after doing 2 years there, I had a really successful run there. We won Best Broadcast in my first year, which was really cool. And also, while I was doing all that, I was doing a lot of videography work. I was incorporating all the film studies and videography work and skills I had accumulated over that time as well. And so a lot of companies started reaching out to me and saying, hey, like, can we hire you? And I was able to balance it for the first couple of months, but then it got so much to a point that I had to bring somebody in who is currently my business partner at What's Up Media, and he started helping me. And then it just got to a point where we had enough business to run off on our own that I could quit my job. And so we started the videography business. We killed it for the 2 years, and then I got back to the same point that I did when I was at Sheridan, where I was like, I need to get back in front of a camera, right? And during that 2-year run of doing videography, I'd host fashion shows. I'd host a couple of varsity games at the university. I dabble in hosting every now and then. So I scratch that itch, but I'm like, I need to get back into, a space where I know I can do this regularly and get paid for it and, go as far as I wanted to go. And that's where I reached out to Blog TO. I'll never forget. It was Christmas. So it was a slow time for me videography wise. And I shot my shot. I always say, like, shooting your shot doesn't apply to just people you're trying to pursue. Whether it's, a partner or, someone that you're interested, also applies into a life and opportunities and doing things you love. And so I reached out to them and I said, hey, you have 3 female hosts, you have no male hosts. Would you be willing to take a chance on me?
Yeah.
And the irony is, like, Deepa, if everyone knows who Deepa Prashad is, who works for KISS now, the OG and who started the whole thing, she did the exact same thing. And I didn't know this prior to applying, but she reached out to BlogTO and said, hey, you have 0 hosts. Have you ever thought about getting into video? And that catapulted. Like, a lot of people don't know that about Deepa. Like, she really kicked off, the digital hosts. Now you see, like, there's like 8 of us now, and it was really just her in the beginning. And so that's what did it for me. I shot my shot, and they took a chance on me. My first video was a bubble tea video, and then the rest is sort of history. 4 years later, I'm here.
That's amazing. And honestly, like, I totally 100% agree with you. Like, people don't realize how important it is to kind of go out there and kind of shoot your shot and take a chance and do that. Like, when I taught in my classes, I'm typically saying, like, I think every job except one was through networking. It was whether it was through LinkedIn or through an event or something like that. It was kind of going out, reaching out to people, making connections, staying in touch, and, just letting people know you're kind of there and, reaching out and just kind of going for it. Right. And I think you have to take your chance. You got to kind of go to the edge and kind of see what happens. Right. So
I mean, this conversation is a perfect example of that. We for anyone that's listening, we had no prior relationship. I think you randomly added me on LinkedIn, and then a few months later, you reached out for a conversation. And and if you didn't do that, we wouldn't be here right now talking, right?
No, it wouldn't be. I'd been following you, and I'm almost 100% like I probably saw you from one of your videos on the Blog TO, and that's for sure probably where I first saw you. And I probably followed you on social media and just kind of went from there. And so obviously I'm seeing what you're doing, and I'm just like, wow, this is a story. It's a great journey. I'd love to share kind of where it started, because I'm sure it's, there's a story there, right? It's going to probably be some ups and downs. There's a journey, and we just see kind of like the doing the interviews, like, you had some great interviews. You interviewed Simu Liu, I think last September, I guess, closer to when he released Shang-Chi, right? That was, probably that was amazing. So, people see that, they're like, oh, he's so lucky he gets to do this. I'm like, yeah, but you heard it now. Like you didn't see the part where he was, going to school or bartending for 4 years, right? Like that part is kind of shown there. You're just kind of seeing the fruits of the hard labor, right? You're seeing that part of it. You're not seeing what
Yeah,
happened behind.
that's the blessing and curse of social media, right? Unfortunately, we want to showcase the best parts of us because ultimately that's what people want to see,
Yeah.
and they don't want to see the journey. And I always have to remind people that it didn't happen with a snap of the fingers. I tell people I got lucky, but I also tell them that I got lucky because I built my own luck, right? I put myself in a position to be lucky, because a lot of this is hard work and having some good luck. But I really do believe that you have to build your luck and getting there.
100%. Like you got to like put the work in. Like everyone needs like a little bit of luck and timing to kind of work out, but it's like you have to have put in that work to kind of be ready for those opportunities, right? Versus like I'm just sitting here, if I'm just sitting here waiting for people to ask me, hey, can I be on your podcast? I'm gonna have 0 episodes for a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
No one's gonna come. I have to kind of, all the people I've had to kind of reach out, like no one's coming out to me, and that's not a problem. That's not me saying, I expect people to come out to me, but like you have to kind of go and put in that effort and work and kind of build your that expertise brand, whatever it is you want to do. You've got to kind of build that up, and you've got to put that work in for that.
Most definitely. No, I could not agree with you more. It's a long and hard journey, but the payoff is incredible if you're persistent enough.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, like talking about some of the interviews and stuff you've done loads of interviews, kind of, both sides. You've been interviewed, you've interviewed people. Was there an interview maybe you were most nervous for, if any, and was there one that you were maybe most excited for?
So I love this question because I know the answer right away. So my first real interview was Russel Peters.
Okay.
And
yeah.
I didn't find out till the night before that it was going to happen. And for BlogTO, we had dabbled in a couple of like live streams. And that was the other thing, that it was live streamed. It was an IG live. It wasn't like pre-taped. So it's not like I could make mistakes and we could edit it after. But I found out the night before. It was my first celebrity interview, and it was Russel Peters of all people. And anyone who knows Russel Peters, like he really put a lot of us, not I say a lot of us, but he put us on the map in terms of, South Asians having talent, and, anyone that I grew up with quoted Russel Peters at some point, right? In one of his skits. Yeah. And, it really put a culture forward as well, and some of the jokes and how relatable it was. So to find out that I was going to interview this guy that I looked up to, and someone that I was like, I want to be him one day, was just completely surreal. And so that's what made it more nerve-wracking. Like I had 24 hours to prepare, it was my first real big interview. It was on IG live. So, I could easily be turned into a meme or go viral if I do something stupid or say something stupid. So that goes through my head. And, lucky for, if you watch that interview, Russell had a really long day promoting his pay-per-view. It was like a New Year's Eve comedy special. And so, when BlogTO pops up after he's come from ET Canada, naturally he's going to think, I'm probably, maybe half-ass this, right? I mean, that's not to throw shots at him, but like I understand his mindset as well. He's probably, I don't know if he knows BlogTO, and he's never met me before, so there's no prior relationship. And so, there was some level of having to break it into him and make him sort of comfortable with me and know who I am and the direction of the conversation. And by the end of it, man, like he was telling me, he's like, next time you're in California, like he says it on the live, next time you're in California, hit me up, like come and visit, whatever. And it's cool if you watch that interview from beginning to end, the growth of the conversation, and how it transforms into ultimately what I want it to be. So when I think about my most nerve-wracking, I wanted to puke. Like I was pacing back and forth, just standing in front of my ring light with my phone ready, ready to talk to Russel Peters. And then in terms of like what's coming up, I don't have an answer for you. I don't have anyone that's coming up that I'm looking forward to. I'm nervous with, but as a sideline reporter, I get to interview players and coaches all the time, and so that's always fun. And with it being my second year in the league, I'm getting more comfortable with these guys, and they're starting to recognize who I am as well.
Absolutely. I'm definitely gonna go back. I saw it on your website, like his interview there. I didn't see it, so I'm gonna have to go back and I want to listen to that now.
It's
So
a good watch. I think you'd
yeah,
enjoy
yeah,
it.
because you got me intrigued now, right? Because now I want to see like how it's kind of started and kind of where it ended, right? Because you see how you build
Yes.
that rapport and that conversation. And and maybe you're right. Maybe he was okay, I'm kind of tired, but you as an interviewer in doing your job, you got him to kind of engage, and then he's kind of more engaged, right? And that's kind of the skill of an interviewer, right? To kind of like get that engagement with them, right? Versus
Yeah,
just
and
kind of going
like
through the motions.
I had to do my homework, and I also pride myself on asking questions that so individuals not been asked over and over again. So I watched his ET Canada interview right before me. It was on IG Live, and then I saw some other stuff he was doing press wise, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to ask him the same questions over and over because I want a unique answer. And I did the same thing for Simu Leo. Like if you watch it, I brought up all these photos of his journey to becoming Shang-Chi. And I'm
I
like, if you look at
remember.
this photo, what is remember? And like that was something that I was like, I want to make this interview unique, and I was able to do that with him as
Yeah,
well.
that one I watched that one live. I think I saw you make the post saying, "Hey, it was coming up," and I was
Yeah,
so
yeah.
excited, not just for the movie, but just for the fact that like Simu's like a local guy, like he's a local, Toronto GTA kid. So I think it was even more exciting. So I was so excited to kind of like to watch that one. So it was a really well done interview. I remember the way he entered in too. Like he had like this kind of like the way he was moving with his hand, he had this, like
It was
aura kind of
it
thing.
yeah, he panned up like he was like a god. It was
Yeah, it
hilarious.
was so funny. So I still remember that the way he kind of like entered into the interview was funny. So that's
And that's a
amazing.
credit to him.
Yeah,
He's a real down to earth guy, and it seems like you know what, in just even talking to people behind the scenes who know him, he's exactly who you would expect him to be, and he's done a great job of putting Canada on the map too.
he has. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to actually reading his new book, We Are Dreamers. I'm looking forward. I haven't got a
Mm-hmm.
chance, but I'm looking forward to that for sure. And so, just following up with this one, like, with the time you spent interviewing, was there anything that maybe surprised you the most when you kind of first got started in like the media industry? Maybe you weren't expecting?
Oh wow, I have never been asked that question. Look at you, Vishaal. Good job. Things that surprised me getting into the industry. You know what? Okay, this is kind of a shitty one, but I also want to talk about it because I think it's very important, especially if your followers are of South Asian descent. If they're brown like us, if they're Asian, whatever. Um, I I think we don't do good enough job as a South Asian community of supporting one another. And what I mean
Hmm.
by that is, I think other communities, whether, if it's a group of women, whether it's the Black community, I think they do such an incredible job of uplifting each other, engaging with one another's content, going out of their way and saying, nice things about one another. And I think, for me, when I got into it, I had my really close friends, reached out to me and, encouraged me and all that sort of stuff. But I think as time has gone on, it almost feels like people just expect it from me, which I mean, that's a compliment in itself. But I think that, when I kind of look at some of my counterparts, or I see some of these other kids coming up, I feel like I wish people would show love to each other more, because I don't think people understand how long that goes, like how far that can help into someone. Like I always say, please and thank yous go such a long way. And
Hmm.
I think the same thing goes for when, you want to support, right? I always like, working for Blog TO, I saw what the pandemic did to a lot of small businesses. And I was always trying to encourage people, like, go on Google and review, right? Go in and rate this person, comment, share their posts. Like it costs you $0 to do that, right? What costs you money is to go buy the products, but to support someone that you love, or someone that you support, all you got to do is engage with their content, and it goes such a long way. And I think the same thing kind of applies to pupils in our life. Like I think the videography and the photography community do a fantastic job of supporting one another. And I realize a lot of their stuff is visual, so it's a lot easier. But
Hmm.
I think just as a brown community, I would love to see us all kind of push each other more and encourage and support one another more.
I think that's a great point. I'm not, I've thought about it too, and I'm not sure what the reason or why it might be that way, whether it's just,
You know what it is. You know what it is because we've grown up with without our parents telling us that we've done a great job, because in a weird way, that's their way of showing love. Like they don't want to over compliment you. Like I
Yeah.
can count on probably one time on my hands, one time, the amount of times my dad has told me he's proud of me. And it's not because he's not proud of me or he doesn't support me, but I think it's just like that inherent, like, we're proud of you. We just don't have to tell you all the time. Right. And so I think that's a part of it in our community. It's like, I don't have to tell that person. That person already knows, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's just the upbringing of like, it's like we've maybe just been taught like it wasn't something that was openly discussed. Like when they were kids, they didn't hear
Yes.
that type of thing. So it goes on until we break that cycle and we tell our own kids and say, hey, you know what, really proud of the stuff you're doing. Like, even when it's unsolicited, like not when they're coming to you, but just coming to say, hey, you know what, like, whether it's your son or daughter, just saying like, hey, like, I'm really proud of what you're doing, or like, this is great, or like, the stuff you're doing, right? And I think it has to kind of break that cycle somewhere. So hopefully we, like our age generation,
Yes.
we can kind of break that and kind of, start a new kind of, cycle of kind of, encouraging, supporting, and just, telling people how we, feel, and not just kind of like be holding that and think, oh, I'm sure they know. I'm sure they know that I'm
Yes.
supporting them, right? Because no one knows, right? I mean, until you say it, like no one knows. You think they know, but they don't know.
Right, exactly. That was a tongue twister. Sound like a
Yeah,
poet there, but yes,
yeah,
I know exactly what you're saying.
yeah. And so that's a great point. Wow, that was a great answer. And
That
just
was a great question. I told you I've never been asked that before, so it's great.
yes, yeah, just making notes as you're writing down. Or ask questions haven't been asked before. It's like grab my pen and scribble down. Like
You
I
were
had
listening.
I had to cross out my original question. Like, okay, new question. Gotta go in a new direction here. And so, okay, that's amazing. And now this is kind of relatively, these new gigs are relatively recent, and it's super cool. Obviously, being a basketball fan myself, but how did you get involved with the Raptors 905 and the Canadian Elite Basketball League? That's so amazing.
Yeah, so I'll start with the Canadian Elite Basketball League. I'm lucky enough, born and raised in Guelph, and I actually still live in Guelph. And so, Guelph was one of the original 6 teams in the CEBL. And again, this is why I always preach, you never know who's watching you. You never know who's listening. The power of word of mouth is a crazy thing. Weirdly enough, I think about all the jobs except for maybe BlogTO. I haven't had to apply for anything. Like I haven't had to, physically or, virtually apply for anything because, so many people have been talking about me. And, I think a lot of that's because I've used my social media as a resume. And that's something that I always encourage with young people as well. Like, put your passions out there, share what you love, because someone is going to notice, and you want whatever it is that you love, you want your name to be associated with that, right? When people think of basketball, I want them to think of Dhanung. When people think of movies, I want people to think of Dhanung. When people think of Disney, I want people to think of Dhanung. Yeah. Right. And so, with the CBL, the Nighthawks, the Guelph Nighthawks reached out to me and they said, hey, like, people have talked about your ability to host. Obviously, we've seen what you've done as well. Would you like to be our in-game host? And that was like, I froze because it's basketball, and secondly, it's in my hometown. Like, how cool would it be to host a party, showcase, some of the best basketball in the city and in front of my home crowd and in front of my friends. And then the pandemic happened, and so that never came to fruition. And so my role kind of changed. I did some digital hosting stuff for them, for like an online series that they ended up doing. And then the next thing I know, my name was being tossed around as a sideline reporter. And then they reached out to me and said, hey, like, we know you never got to do your in-game hosting, but how do you feel about sideline reporting? And I think, through the digital content, maybe they saw my personality. They told me that I reminded them of Cabby a lot, which is a huge compliment if anyone who knows who Cabby is, especially in his heyday and his peak. And so, I got the sideline gig. I did year 1. And then after that year, the MLC reached out to me again. And Daniela, who, I have a great deal of respect for, reached out to me and she said, hey, I've been following you. I see you love basketball. I see that, you have the ability of public speaking through BlogTO and some of the other things you've done. Would you like to be an in-game host? And as you can imagine, as a basketball fan growing up and watching the Raptors, I was completely floored, and it was a no-brainer. And next thing I know, I'm the in-game host for the Raptors 905, and then I got to do Jurassic Park, as I'm sure you saw, and that was a dream come true because I went to Jurassic Park. It was before it was Jurassic Park. It was called Party in the Square, and so that was the first time that I'd gone to it. And then to be on the other side was a full circle moment for me. So yeah,
That's
long-winded
amazing.
answer to your question, but that's how those two opportunities came to me.
That's amazing. Like I this is why I love like hearing stories like this, because like I think when other people also hear this too, like the goal really what I want is I want people to kind of be, give people hope and kind of motivate, hey, like, go and do the things you're interested in, right? Like, amazing things can happen. And you kind of talked about like, just post things that are kind of authentic to you. It's going to attract your tribe of people, right? You're going to attract those people kind of to you. Post the things that you're genuinely excited about, you're interested in, and you're going to, connect with like-minded people who, think the same way, and they're going to be able to kind of connect with you, and you're going to be able to build new relationships, new opportunities, and who knows where that's going to take you. You don't know. It could be someone you've met now, but an opportunity could lead from it 4 or 5 years later. You just don't know.
Yeah, it's funny that you said tribe, because one of my mottos is your tribe is your vibe, or you could say your vibe is your tribe. And it's so important to be around like-minded individuals, right? Because if you kind of just hang around the your same group of people that you've been going with since high school and stuff like that, like those are great people to have in your life, right? Because there's a reason you've been friends with them that long. But then it's also very important to surround yourself with like-minded individuals and people that are passionate about the same things as you are, because they only motivate and push you to be the best version of yourself as well. And that was a decision and conversation I had to have with myself a long time ago. Is I was bartending, I was going out with friends, and I don't drink. So, that wasn't really appealing to me, but, I did it for the sake of my friends and not to be I didn't want to be one of those guys that, was a party pooper. And then I had to make the hard decision to start chasing my dreams and start talking to people that are within the industry or trying to get in the industry. And those people uplifted me. And that's a huge part of why I'm in the position that I am today.
It's such a great point that you have to kind of, find people that kind of look like the kind of the future that you kind of want. If you want to if you want to start, let's say, if all your friends are they're happy working their regular job, which is great, nothing wrong with that. But if you have an aspiration to start a business or something like that, you got to maybe have a set of people, or you've got to go to some kind of networking events where you're talking to other business owners and people like that. You've got to find that set of people. So it doesn't mean you have to necessarily dismiss the people you have, but you got to have a second group of people who are kind of aligning to the future that you're trying to get towards. And you got to kind of find those people, and you got to spend time.
And I couldn't agree with you more. Like self-awareness is a huge part of it as well, right?
It's a big part of it. And like now hearing so much about your journey, actually I'm going to start with this one. What do you maybe wish you knew before you started like your career in this path? Is there anything you kind of wish maybe you knew before you had started?
Another great question. Like, what would I tell my younger self?
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, like I wish that I'd spoken up earlier, right? Or I'd done things earlier. I think, I think the goal, or not the goal, but, the hope always is to do everything young, because then, you get to where you ultimately want to be earlier. But everyone's paths are different, and everything kind of happens for a reason, right? I'm a huge believer in that, and in that energy as well. But I think like, if there's something I could have warned myself about it, I think it'd be like, it's supposed to be this hard, right? It's not supposed to be easy. That's why, the best of the best kind of get in, and some people fall off, because it's just like your drive of want to get more. And I think that's what separated me, right? I think people look at me and think like it's all sunshine and lollipops, but like I said to you, I've fallen on my face a lot, and it's that adversity that kind of built me and propelled me to where I am now. And I think I always tell people there's tons of people that are more talented than I am. And, I'm obviously always like looking in my rear view window of people trying to catch up to me, or, get to my position or exceed me. But I always tell people that like the difference between me and other people is like, I just want it more. And I think if you just want it more than other people, then you'll make it happen.
100%. That's a great answer.
I'm sorry if I hope that answered your question.
It does. Yeah, it's a great one. And actually I was going to ask this one, but you've kind of already answered it in different points. I was going to ask you like, what kind of advice would you give for someone who wants to, get started in media and broadcasting? I think you've kind of answered that along the way with multiple different points, I think, which is great, because it just gives people kind of insight into like, how do I start? Because sometimes it can be overwhelming, right? Like, I'm really interested in this, but how do I start and you get so wrapped up in your head and overwhelmed, you don't just take that first step. Like you just
Right.
start to
And
think of all these things that you got to do, and you never end up doing any one of them.
I think that, we live in a culture where we want to see overnight success, or, I mean, people are changing jobs in a snap, right? Like nobody likes, nobody likes change. I mean, sorry, everybody likes change, right? In the sense that, like, after 3 or 4 years, we're seeing people change jobs at a crazy rate, right? And, people are picking up side hustles and all that sort of stuff. And I think the three things that I sort of preach to people are patience. Oh my God, what are the three things? Patience, persistence, and self-awareness. Those are like kind of the three things that are really important to me. The patience is like, things aren't going to happen overnight, right? And, you just have to wait for some things to happen at the right time, right? It's just like everyone's time is different. And so the patience is a huge part of it. Persistence is like not giving up, right? If things don't happen for you, then you just have to keep at it, right? Eventually things will fall in your favor. And then the self-awareness. If you're not good at something, or if you need help, don't be afraid to ask people, right? I've asked way more questions than I've given out answers. A perfect example is, I invested in some property way back, like it's been like 7 or 8 years ago, and I knew nothing about real estate. And so I surrounded myself around the right people that knew everything and would put me in a position to be successful at that. So even, I'm not the best photographer, right? So if I need photo help, I've got the right people around me. It's like just putting yourself around the right people and not being afraid to ask those questions if you have them.
That is honestly such a great answer. And I think even just to piggyback off of that, people should, when they're thinking about, how do I get started to do something, look at the people who you look up to, admire. And if you really study their journey, you're going to see that they didn't just go from A to B right away. Like it didn't just skip a bunch of steps to get there. Just even if you look at movies, or even look at, we were talking about Simu Liu earlier, like if you look at his journey from being, an extra in certain movies, this and that, the rejections from certain movies, like that, like it's people just think that, oh, you got the big Marvel movie, but like you have to look at the small steps it took to kind of build up to that, right? You didn't just kind of
right and
jump
and
up
I
there.
think if you have those conversations, you'd be surprised how many people struggled and how many people would tell you that it wasn't an easy path to get there. Because I think the misconception is like, oh man, that person just got so lucky, which is
I think I sometimes wonder whether people use a statement like you said, like, oh, they're lucky, or they had family support as an excuse to not go for it, or not to like work hard, like, to just use that use and say, they're just lucky, they're just lucky they got there, or they must have help, or they must have had some support, as a crush to kind of say, well, I guess like no point in me doing it, right? I'm not gonna, like, it's just an excuse to not have to like dig in and see the actual work you have to do. Because I think very rarely are you going to see that people who've had success have had a very smooth ride. Probably very few were just like instant kind of successes. Everyone's kind of got a story there. And I think the more we hear those stories, the more we share those stories, people are going to see, wow, you know what? Like this person, he or she, is really not that significantly different from me. The way they, and I feel if I can relate to that, if they can do that in what they want to do, I think I could do what I want to do in this area. I just got to kind of take the first step and identify what is that first step. It's like a ladder. It's like that. You don't have to climb. I don't have to like put the ladder and just get right to the top. I just got to first put the ladder down and place it in the right spot and just get on the ladder. That's the first thing I have to do, right? Then I can worry about taking one step up.
And that's why, like, I was talking about shooting your shot. Like, it's really important for you to have the conversations with people that you kind of aspire to be, or, if in the same arena, because, once you kind of click and you kind of find out how related you are, or, how similar you are, it gives you a lot of hope. And I think sometimes that can be the starting of sort of your journey, your hero's journey, if you will.
Hero's journey. Yeah. I love that. That's where I kind of like, I had got this name. I told in my first episode was like, I was actually teaching a course, a writing for designers class, and one of the topics was storytelling, and there was like the whole hero's journey thing. And I was like, and even though at that time I wasn't thinking about the podcast, but when I did a few years later, my mind kind of went back to that hero's journey, and also thinking about games I played, like a Legend of Zelda, something like that journey that a character kind of takes, that growth, the up and down, the failures, and kind of coming all the way through at the end. And that's kind of how I landed on the name from.
I think I love the name of the podcast, man. It's very intuitive and very smart.
I appreciate it, bro. I appreciate it. And so going into some more little more fun questions, I guess, say, what would you say, like, if you had to say, like, what would you say your superpower is?
Oh, I think it's my energy. Like I think it's my enthusiasm. It's very a lot of people will tell you like they're always like, oh, I want to know what D's on because whatever D's on, I want to be on that. I always, make the best of a situation. I'm always a half glass full guy. And yeah, if you need an event to be hyped up or if you need someone to bring energy to broadcast, I 9 times out of 10, you can rely on me to do that.
I think that's a great, and I think I would agree with that. Despite not, this is our first time talking, but just following you online, I feel like every time I see your post, like if you're not at a game one, you're doing some other work. You're like I saw you, and you're like maybe like at a tennis court thing. I'm like, how does he have the energy to like to do all these things? But he's like, I saw one story you were like playing tennis. I was like, man, like, that's running around. He's talking all the. He's got to talk a lot, be on camera, be on point, and he's gonna picking up a racket and running and playing tennis. I was like, wow, this guy's full of energy. So I actually do wholeheartedly agree with that superpower. I think it does fully kind of describe you.
Yeah,
You're
like
like,
I mean, I would love to say other things like my humor and stuff like that, but I think the most common thing or feedback I get from people is just like, oh, like, it's funny when I tell people that don't know me that I'm a digital host or I'm an in-game host, they're like, yep, I see it. That makes a lot of sense. Just like talking to them for 5 minutes and like that's a huge compliment to me, right? Like I always my thing is like I always want to make a good impression on people and I want people to remember me for the good reasons, not the bad ones.
that's such a great answer. And as we kind of wind down here, this is another question I want to ask you. Maybe in could be a tough question sometimes. What's maybe something that other people value that you don't?
Oh, wow. What the hell? Stop asking me these type of questions, man. Um, Something that people value
That you don't
I
necessarily value.
that I don't. Oh, I'm so curious what some of your other guests have said. It's funny because I think before I got in my relationship with my current girlfriend, I probably would have said relationships because I was so committed to the grind, and like that can sometimes be a downfall of someone, right? Like if you're so obsessed with
Mhm.
the grind and getting to your goals and not taking care of yourself and finding yourself a support system and using your family and whatnot. So I feel like 2 years ago that probably would have been my answer, but now I don't know. I think like I'm such a simpleton, which like might sound weird, right? Like I really appreciate just sitting at home and watching a movie. I watch a movie once a week by myself at a movie theater. Yeah, and I did say by myself for anyone that's listening, because I find it so therapeutic, right? I love that, and so like some people love to go out and party. They like big crowds, and so I know that there's some people that really take a lot of value in that. But then again, a lot of people live different lives, right? Like some people live for the weekend, where it's like for me, I work at so many different hours that sometimes I live for a Monday, sometimes I live for a Wednesday, right? Depending on when I have my day off. So I don't obsess so much about like massive gatherings and being super like being social in big settings as much as some people do. And maybe I should, because I know that's a great opportunity to network and might be an odd opportunity for me to talk to someone who I haven't caught up with in a while and stuff like that. So maybe that's the answer, but I think I feel like you're gonna get me sleeping restless tonight because I'm gonna be thinking about that all night now.
Yeah, it's you know what, going back to what you were saying, it's like I was never that overly social. I forget the pandemic for a moment, like that we haven't been able to do a lot of those things anyway. But even before then, but the last, I'd say 2018, 19, I really found myself wanting to be more social. And I would enjoy going to like, I think the ROM had those Halloween or Friday Night Live kind of things. So I would
Yes.
like, despite not being a good dancer or anything, but you just went with your few friends and you just had a fun evening. You danced for a bit, you got some food, and you got to dress up and take pictures with all sorts of people that you see there. And you
Yep.
kind of walked away. But I equally value those quiet moments, right? I'm very ambivert. I like to do social things, host game nights and do things like that. But I also equally kind of like my quiet alone time as well. I
Hmm.
definitely can't be like all the time in the midst of kind of people or that thing. I have to have some kind of time for myself and just kind of quiet time, whether it's reading or something else or a passion project or this podcast. Like I need that kind of alone time as well. So I find that for me that balance is really important for me.
Yeah, like I'm really convinced I'm gonna like text you later today. I'm gonna be like, yo, can I change my answer? But I overall I agree with you, and I do think that sometimes I take some of those opportunities for granted, just because like it's funny, as extroverted as I am, I'm also very introverted in some ways as well. And I think that's just maybe because of the nature of my work and always constantly being around people, that sometimes I just like the quiet time.
Yeah, and I think that's a great answer, because normally people would probably think the type of work you're in, you want to be always in the middle of people and engage in that type of thing, right? So I think that's actually a great answer. So people, especially today, people probably really want to get out there, and like, I've missed it so much, they're probably craving that type of like large crowds and stuff like that. So I think it's actually refreshing to hear the answer of like, hey, I actually kind of value just kind of being, with myself sometimes, or just even doing things, not even alone, just like the movie, like going solo. Like I kind of value things like that. I don't have to go like a friend's affair that we all got to go and all five of us and go watch this movie at, prime time on a Friday or a Saturday. I'm happy to go by myself whenever I have the time.
Yes, I could not agree with more.
I mean, I remember I asked a few of my friends, I wanted to go see, this was Toy Story 4, so 2019. And unfortunately, no one really wanted to go. And it was a random Tuesday. I just went by myself in the daytime. And like the theater was empty. I loved it. I had the whole row to myself. Like I loved it, actually. I really
It's like one of my favorite feelings in the world, as psychotic as that sounds.
Yeah.
I love being in an empty theater, and like my favorite part about the experience is, your phone is in your pocket. I tend to turn off my phone, and this for that 2 hours, 2.5 hours. I mean, if you're watching a Bollywood movie, it might be 3 hours. That you're paying attention to names, you're paying attention to details, and you're not worried about what's happening outside of that theater.
100%, 100%. And this last question before I quickly jump into this little rapid fire final 5 questions I want to ask you is, I want to wind down with this one. On your website, you said there are many things that you kind of want to achieve, that you still want to achieve. Is there any one thing you can kind of share with us, or maybe what one of those things you'd like to achieve kind of in the future is?
Great question. I think so. Right now, I have my hands in a lot of different things, right? I got the 905, I got Blog TO, I got the CBL, I got my videography. I'm kind of reaching sort of a point in my career where I think I need like one full-time job. And so, I think, I'd love to join one of these major networks at some point and, be a full-time host, whether it's, I don't know, ET Canada, maybe TSN Sportsnet. I'm not that keen on being a guy behind the desk calling highlights. But if it's a segment sort of thing, those are things that I'm kind of trying to look for a consistent platform, and do what I love.
Yeah, that's honestly, and I think that perfectly suits kind of your skill set. So honestly, like from the stuff I've seen of you, like I don't think that time is far away, honestly.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think I'm trying to break through that glass ceiling, as some would say. So I feel like I'm knocking on the door, and I'm very confident in my abilities that I eventually will get there.
Yeah, and I mean, we have been seeing it. I mean, again, not just I don't want people to think like this is a South Asian love fest. I am so happy when I hear across, whether it's women, whether it's East Asian, South Asian, Black, like LGBTQ community. Like, I'm just happy to see the representation across of like who is the best person we think for this role, and giving them that opportunity to kind of shine. And just speaking of that, like a South Asian perspective, we've seen people of South Asians, on TSN before. We've seen, I think, I forgot his name. I think it's Nabil Kareem. He's like now with NBA Canada, or NBA or NBA TV in the US. So we're seeing this happening, right? So we're seeing this, like you said, that glass kind of ceiling kind of cracking and breaking. So I think, like I said, these days are not far. They've already started.
And I mean, like, we're seeing Maitri, kill it on Never Have I Ever on Netflix. Oh my God, I feel so bad. Is it Iman? That's on the Miss Marvel show that just came out today as well.
Yeah.
And it's so important. Like it's such a cliche statement, but like representation really matters. And, I think, one of the coolest, and I don't get to talk about this a lot, but, one of the coolest parts about what I do, whether it's 905 or CBL specifically, when I go to a basketball arena and I'm wearing like a full blown suit and I've got a microphone in the hand, like I can see Desi parents look at me differently. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Like they look at me with a sense of pride. And it's even the kids kind of just seeing me in sort of that position. And like I saw it definitely a lot in Mississauga at 905 games. There's a huge South Asian community there. And, kids want to high five me. I know when I smile at those families, it goes a little bit further than some of maybe the other families that I look at. And I can see the impact and how important it is. And, one of the reasons it was so important for me to be on your podcast was because, you're of the same descent as I am and the skin color and as well. And that's why I just, I want to be able to keep, I think if there's something that I'm striving now in maybe it's the prime of my career. I don't know what you want to call it. It's just like to be able to give people that look like me opportunities and give them hope that it is attainable.
Absolutely. I think when younger kids, they see that they can say, hey, you know what, I now see someone who, looks like me, represents the same culture. And so there is potentially a place for me in a role like that, or there are opportunities for me. It's not excluded. Like that's not a closed door for me. There is an opportunity
Amen.
for me there. And you have to kind of see, you got to have people kind of paving that way. So the next generation of people can say, hey, that is like, you want younger kids to kind of be able to say to their parents, hey, I want to pursue this. And you want parents to say, yeah, go for it. Because those parents are seeing, have already seen us kind of doing those type of things. So it's not a foreign thing. So they're not freaked out saying we've never seen it's not foreign. It's very accepted. So yeah, that is a common, career path you could pursue. Right. And so
and
you have to,
and we're seeing and we are seeing the shift because like I'll talk a lot of younger brown kids and they'll tell me their story and what they want to be. And like naturally, given my upbringing, my first question is like, oh, what do your parents think of it? And they're like, my parents are super cool with it. So we are definitely seeing a shift. And hopefully it's because of some of the groundwork, the ones before me or the ones that are currently killing it in this space have done and made it more realistic for us.
100%. I totally agree with you. So as we wind down here, I usually do like a rapid kind of final 5 rapid fire questions at the end. So I'm going to ask you like 5 kind of quick questions. You just kind of give me your quickest answer.
All right. Good? I'm nervous. Let's do this.
No,
I'm not, like I told you, I'm not usually nervous, but now I'm nervous.
Okay. So I'm trying to look I have a bunch. I'm just going to pick a few. Okay. So when the NBA season ends on June 19th or earlier, blank will be the NBA champions.
The Warriors will be the champions.
I'm not sure. Okay, so I am going for Boston. So we're on.
Oh damn! Oh damn!
I love I really do. But I think my thinking is I need to see other teams beat them so that other teams have hope that they can be beaten. Just like the Raptors did a few years ago. I need to see other teams be able to show that, hey, you know what? Yeah, they're always showing up, but they can also they can be beaten. It's not that if you run into them, it's guaranteed you're losing. And that's why.
And listen, if 2 weeks time, it gets announced the result is that the Celtics will be champions, I will not be surprised. I could make a case for both teams, but I think the experience of the Warriors might trump a very young Celtics team at this point.
It's tough. I think I can see it going around to 7, and it's tough 7 playing at Chase Center. Like it's going to be tough for sure.
Yeah, but to the Celtics credit, they've won 8 games on the road during these playoffs. I don't think a lot of teams have done that in a playoff run. So it's really impressive.
And they're very good defensive. I think the best defensive team this season. So that bodes well as well. Second question, another sports one. Will the Maple Leafs ever win a playoff series with this core that they have?
Oh my God. I'm not a hockey expert, so I don't want to disrespect anybody. It's so funny when you started that question, I thought it was going to be like, are you going to see the Leafs win a championship in your lifetime? And I was like, I don't even know if I can answer that. Yeah. I'm going to say no. Because I think their goal again, I know very little. So any hockey experts, please take this with a grain of salt. But their goaltending issues are a problem. And I also think that I don't know if Tavares is a part of this core if they want to win a championship. I got all the respect in the world for him, but I think like the best version of Tavares we've already seen, and I just don't know moving forward if we can afford to have him on our team. And then we lose a veteran like Spets, that doesn't help either.
Yeah, he's in the front office now too. So you're right. I think there are big decisions to make. You've got a lot tied up in those few people, and you've got to kind of make decisions, right? About how do we maybe even out the roster a little bit? Where do we have playing from a position of extra strength to how do we shore up some of our deficiencies that we kind of have with this team?
Because like we're paying Marner a lot, we're playing Nylander a lot, we're gonna have to pay Matthews a lot. Like one of those guys have to be expendable at some point. Like it just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. Yeah. Next one, favorite restaurant in Toronto.
So I usually hate this question because I've been to so many different places, and I usually like you need to be more specific with me, right? Like you need to be pizza or pizza place. No, but but Vishal, I have an answer for you only because I've been asked this question a lot, so now I'm prepared for it. But there's a Thai restaurant called Pi, very very popular. You know, J. Cole was just recently there. The Raptors during the season stopped by there a lot, and it's not hype. It's really really good. It's very authentic, and the staff is like the sweetest. They're so good, and I think they have 2 locations now. So whenever somebody's like, I'm going to Toronto, where should I go eat? I'm like, as long as you like Thai food, you should go there.
Okay, got it. I'm gonna make a note myself. This one I'm asking because I've seen you kind of, you know, shaking a leg on some of your Instagram stories. What is your kind of go-to kind of dance move on the dance floor?
Bollywood, come on, that's Bollywood? An easy answer. So fun fact about me, some people know this, but not a lot of people, but I auditioned for season 1 of So You Think You Could Dance, and that was an incredible experience, and my go-to dance style was hip-hop for that, just because, like, you know, I grew up on the streets. And so that's all I really knew. And, you know, once they sent me to choreography, and I've never been classically trained, so, you know, to do the 5, 6, 7, 8 to do it on count, it was really difficult for me. But yeah, man, like if you turn on Bollywood music, it's game over. Like I'm dancing for the next like 3 hours. I'm the first one on the dance floor at an Indian wedding, and I'm the last. You're ripping me off the dance floor by the end of the night.
So okay, you know what? That's perfect. To piggyback off that for the last final 5. Favorite Bollywood.
Please ask me what my favorite Bollywood movie.
Favorite Bollywood movie, or if you want to go favorite Bollywood song, you can go movie or song, whichever one touches your heart more.
I'm gonna go movie, and I have so many memories attached to a specific movie, and like when I think of it, like I think about a certain point in my life, and I think about, you know, being in Gujarati school and kind of just being like almost my happiest, just because of you know, where I was in my life and the people I had in my life. I'm totally like just building this lead up right now. But it's Mohabbaten, if anyone remembers that movie. Shah Rukh Khan, teacher at Gurukul.
I think it's a 90, might have been 98, late 90s, I think.
Don't say it's 98, because now you're really gonna make me feel old. Because I thought I would, like, before I said that, I'm like, that has to be a 2000 movie. It's exactly 2000.
Maybe it's 2000. Okay, I was close.
So yeah, if nobody knows, Shah Rukh plays a teacher at Gurukul. You know, Amitabh Bachchan is the principal, headmaster. I don't know what you would call it. Yeah, the headmaster. And then you have these 3 couples, 3 boys that go to school, and, you know, their love is not supposed to be a part of the agenda. But because it's a Hindi movie, you know, love ultimately wins all. Between the music, I've done a couple of performances from those songs. I love that movie, and it's one of those, you know, it has the rewatchability factor where, like, at any point in that movie it starts, it kind of triggers something, and you kind of end up watching the whole movie.
I love it. That's a great answer. That is such a great answer.
What's your favorite Bollywood movie?
Geez. Okay, no, oh my God, why am I drawing a blank? I usually know and have my answer. So there's more
song.
No, there's movie one. Oh my God, no, I know one's in my head. Other one I shouldn't know. Tare Zameen Par, the one with Amir Khan. That one, it's a story about a kid who has dealing with like dyslexia.
Yes, my dad loves that movie. My dad really, really loves that movie. I
loved the story. I loved just that one. And the other one, if I could just throw it in, would have been it was with, I think it was Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara. It was like 3 actors. It was like Hrithik Roshan.
And Hrithik Roshan. Yeah, it's like a coming of age story.
Coming of age about, I just like the story and but coming of age and that story of life and friendship. And so those 2. Usually when people ask me for like, I'll give those 2.
So you must like Dil Chahta Hai too, then, right? Because that movie is very similar to that one as well. If you've never seen it, it's got Amir Khan in it too.
Yeah, I think I've seen it, but like I feel like I started watching more Bollywood movies. I don't know when that movie came out, but I think I started watching them like into my 20s. I started watching Bollywood movies more. That might have just been before. So
2011.
Was it 2011?
Yeah.
Oh, then
2011. That's when you got into Bollywood.
yeah, that's when I got into, yeah. So like I think I may have missed some of those ones. I've heard the movie, but I don't think I've fully seen that one. So I'll have to make a note to see, but I've heard of it.
So if there's any like Caucasian or white folks listening to this podcast, my favorite movie to recommend to people is Lagan. And you saying Amir Khan, I always recommend that one because it was in the running for like an Oscar. I think
It was,
it was
yeah.
nominated for best picture. So it's really got a good like mix of Western meets Eastern, and it's just such a heartwarming tale. And it gives me like I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it now. I kind of want to watch it.
Yeah, honestly, I kind of want to watch these movies again now because it's been so long, honestly. So I kind of want to go
Mhm.
back and like just kind of use like a quiet, lazy weekend and just kind of like watch these and just kind of go like one after the other, which will probably be like a good 6 to 9 hours if you're
I
going
was gonna
back
say
to
you'll
back.
probably manage to squeeze in 2 movies if
You
that's
can
the
probably go
case.
two at most, yeah, two at the absolute most. But honestly, bro, this was amazing. I love it. Like, thank you so much for being such an amazing guest. Coming on here, sharing your journey, also the words of wisdom. I think my biggest takeaway was just to people is that whatever you're into, whatever you're excited about, passionate about, just go for it. Like immerse yourself, take a chance, and and just kind of see where that takes you. You've got nothing to lose. And if you don't follow D online, I strongly recommend you do this. Where can people kind of find you and kind of connect with you online?
Yeah, so I mean, my IG is just my name, Dhanung. I have a Twitter which I can usually tweet at. It's at the Fresh Prince, and then like the one-stop shop, if you will, of everything that I do and that I've done, and where you can find all my socials is just my website. So it's just my name, Dhanung.com. So yeah, and I mean, listen, I'm a big person of giving back, and the wisdom is a huge part of it as well because I've been through the ups and downs, and I always encourage people. I'm just a DM or an email away if you have any questions or if I can help you with anything. So don't be a stranger if you're listening.
There you have it. Well, that's it for us. This wraps up another episode of the Hero's Journey podcast. I'm looking forward to seeing you all again soon. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. If you can rate and review, it would mean so much to me. And you can always find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Music. See you all soon.